Group Session 11. The People Who Harmed You. Quote, I tell myself they're not even worth thinking about, but it's confusing at times because they still feel like this big presence in my life. End quote. Kelly. Quote, my dad abandoned me when I was 2 and then re-entered my life when I was 40 because he'd been thrown out of his supported accommodation. I let him stay in the guest room, and he was moody, messy, and would drink all my beer. He was like the teenage son I never wanted. End quote. Jen. This is usually an important and yet challenging chapter for many people. The extent of relationship people have today with those who harmed them can vary greatly. Some people have cut this person or people out of their lives completely. Others have no current relationship because the abusive or neglectful person is deceased, or they have no idea where they are or how to contact them. However, many people continue to have some relationship with those who harmed them. There can be many reasons for this. Some feel obligated, perhaps due to family pressure or other reasons. For others, despite everything that occurred, the person is still important and the relationship has had a chance to heal to some extent. Whether you have contact with the people who harmed you or not, you still have a relationship with these people. If it's not an actual relationship, it's a psychological relationship, i.e., they still exist in your mind, feelings, or memories. Whether you have an actual or psychological relationship, exploring this relationship in ways that support your recovery is what this chapter is about. Is forgiveness necessary? This is a common question. Sometimes we are told or read that to overcome the effects of historical trauma, you have to be able to forgive those who hurt you. We do not see it as our place to say whether you should forgive these people. We have worked with people who have felt able to forgive those who hurt them and have found this to be an important part of their therapy. We've also worked with others who believe it is impossible to forgive those who hurt them, or they simply don't want to forgive them, or they don't see the point. Many of these individuals have also made good progress. Our view is this. For some people, forgiveness is important, but we do not think it is essential that an individual forgives in order to overcome the effects of their past. If forgiving seems possible and useful, that's fine. But if you can't or don't want to forgive, this is not something to get hung up on. The extent of the abuse can make forgiveness more difficult for some people. Also, forgiveness is much harder when the perpetrator will not acknowledge any wrongdoing, express any remorse, or offer some explanation for their actions. Forgiveness is also harder if it feels very difficult to understand why they acted as they did. Whether you forgive or not isn't the essential issue. What is vital is that those who caused harm have as little negative impact on you, your thoughts and feelings, as possible. If forgiveness helps to support this, that's fine. If not, don't worry about it. Is it important to know why someone harmed you as a child? People who experienced childhood harm seem to largely respond to the above question in one of 3 ways. These responses are captured in the statements below. For the exercise below, we want you to consider one person who abused, neglected, or abandoned you during childhood. Place a tick next to the response that seems closest to how you think about the question. There is no correct answer, only your answer. Exercise 1. Is it important to know why they harmed you? Yes, I do want to know why they did it. If I knew why they did it, I'd feel like it may help in some way. No, I don't want to think about why they did it. It's never really occurred to me to think about why they did it. Please pause the audio and complete exercise 1 in the guidebook. Some people will have chosen the first answer. Yes, I do want to know why they did it. These individuals often imagine that if they can make at least some sense of why those who harmed them acted as they did, it may help them recover. Tom is a good example. His mother was 16 when he was born, and the only father figures he knew were the string of boyfriends his mother had throughout his childhood. Quote, my mom partied a lot, and there was often this collection of strange people around the house. It wasn't until I was 12 that social services finally put me and my brother and sister into foster care with this nice family. I really want to know why she had kids and why she didn't seem to care about us. End quote. People like Tom imagine that making sense of why his mother acted as she did might help him overcome the effects of that harm. Put another way, there might be a connection between meaning and healing. Other individuals identify more with the second statement. No, I don't want to think about why they did it. Psychologists call this suppression, which means consciously blocking thinking about something. This was true for Martin, who was physically and sexually abused by an alcoholic father. Quote, what's the point of thinking about why he did it? It won't change what happened, so it's just a waste of time. End quote. There are a few reasons we come across why people, like Martin, will want to consciously block out thinking about why they were harmed. First, some individuals find it painful or distressing to even think about the person who harmed them. And, of course, to make sense of why they may have harmed you means thinking about them. Second, certain people imagine that if they begin to understand why someone harmed them, they may start to feel some empathy for that person. Or they imagine that understanding a person's harmful actions may lead to the possibility of forgiving them. Some are so angry with the person who harmed them that the idea of empathizing with them or forgiving them seems unthinkable. We have a particular view on this dilemma. Sometimes understanding someone's actions can lead to feelings of empathy or a willingness to forgive, but in other instances, understanding does not lead to empathy or any wish to forgive that person's actions. For some individuals, even with understanding, the actions of those who harmed them are beyond empathy or forgiveness. Third, for some people, it seems impossible to imagine why someone would act like the person who harmed them. Figuring out why they did it feels like doing a puzzle with a million pieces, some of which are missing or torn. So, some individuals resist thinking about why they did it because it seems like an impossible quest. If you're invested in not knowing why they did it, why might that be? Is it painful to think about? Are you worried it may in some way be connected to empathy or forgiveness? Does finding answers seem impossible? Or is there other reasons we haven't thought of? Lastly, some people can identify with the statement, it's never really occurred to me to think about why they did it. Psychologists call this repression, which just means unconsciously blocking thinking, i.e., blocking thinking about something without even knowing we are blocking thinking about it. For those who respond this way, it's rarely because they don't care or the abuse or neglect they experienced was unimportant. In fact, the opposite is often true. There is something about the harm which occurred which is so significant that the individual has needed to unconsciously block thinking about why it occurred. This can happen for a number of reasons, including the 3 reasons given in the previous paragraph. 2 final thoughts on this section. First, The purpose of this chapter is not to tell you how you should think about those who caused harm, but to allow you to explore this area to whatever extent possible. Second, what sense you have made of why people harmed you can relate to whether or not there has been a confrontation and what happened if this occurred. We discuss confrontation later in the chapter. Why did they do it? If a part of you doesn't want to think about this question, here's something to consider which may make it easier. The fundamental purpose of exploring why someone harmed you is not to excuse their behavior, forgive their behavior, or empathize with them. So, what might be the point of trying to understand why people harmed you? There are a few reasons why this can be helpful. First, something awful and incomprehensible may be worse than something awful but which has become, at least to some extent, comprehensible. For some, there can be a connection between meaning and healing. Second, energy can get tied down in suppressing or repressing what happened and the reasons behind it. When you stop pushing it away, that energy may be available to you again. If you can turn and face what you have been avoiding, what may have been worrying or disturbing can sometimes lose that sense of threat. Third, while not true for everyone, some can feel a lot of anger at the people who hurt them. While anger is likely an understandable reaction, there can be a problem. The anger may churn inside, causing pain and distracting a person from life and their relationships. You could call this stuck anger. For some, there is a possibility that understanding why those who harmed you have acted as they did can help release some of the anger. There are at least 4 explanations for why someone caused harm to you during childhood. These explanations can overlap, but also have unique characteristics. Before reading the explanations below, we suggest you choose a person from childhood who caused you harm. As you read, consider to what extent each explanation sheds light on the person's behavior. You will have an opportunity following for further reflection through writing. 1. A person learns to be an abuser through experiences of abuse. Some people grew up in circumstances where they experienced and or witnessed abuse. This may have been the case for the person who harmed you. As a child, this abusive environment seemed normal, just the way things are. This child may not have experienced or witnessed mutual respect, protection, and care. A child in this environment will feel fear, powerlessness, and humiliation. They watch what is happening and see in control abusers and out of control victims. As a child, they were one of the victims. Most of these children will not grow up to become abusers themselves. However, some of these children will decide that if the world consists of abusers and victims, it's better to be an abuser. They may identify with the person doing the abusing and not identify with other victims. As they grow older and develop relationships, they may experience a sense of control and power through abusing, and it can feel better to finally have power and control rather than just being powerless and humiliated. 2. Abuse or neglect is related to significant mental health or medical issues. Some adults can be psychologically or medically unwell. They may have a significant problem, such as psychosis, bipolar disorder, or severe depression. They may have serious issues with drugs or alcohol addiction. They may have issues related to a diagnosed or undiagnosed brain injury resulting in cognitive problems or poor impulse control. They may be involved with mental health services, and some spend time in psychiatric wards. When a person struggling with significant mental health problems reaches a certain point of exhaustion or frustration, they may lash out with abuse, though they often feel distressed or regretful concerning their behavior. If very unwell, these individuals may simply be incapable of caring for their children, and neglect or abandonment can result. 3. Abuse is a consequence of an empathy deficit. The vast majority of people are sensitive to others' pain or suffering. However, there are a small number of people who have little or no capacity for empathy. Some of these people not only lack empathy, but take pleasure in seeing others in pain, i.e., they are sadistic. A lack of empathy or sadism is associated with serious characterological problems such as narcissistic, antisocial, or sociopathic personality disorders. Unlike individuals from explanation number 2, these people may feel little distress or regret when they harm others. Is an empathy deficit the result of an individual's genetic makeup, or is it the result of their experiences? Research in this area is sparse, but there is at least one well-conducted study which followed twin and non-twin siblings over time. The results suggest that an individual's capacity to feel empathy is about 52 to 57% due to genetics, and the person's capacity to think in an empathetic way is about 27% related to genetics. It's a complex area, and even these figures are based on averages. In truth, we don't have an adequate understanding of why someone is significantly empathy deficit. In some instances, empathy deficit may result from serious and persistent historical abuse or empathy never having been shown or taught to someone. Alternatively, some people may be genetically predisposed toward extreme insensitivity. There are historical examples for both explanations. Hitler, Stalin, Mao Zedong, and Kim Jong-il all displayed serious empathy deficit and sadistic behavior. Hitler and Stalin were both physically abused by alcoholic fathers, whereas Mao Zedong and Kim Jong-il, as far as we know, did not experience significant childhood trauma. 4. The person is not developmentally ready to be a parent or lacks support. Reason number 4 may overlap with any of the first 3 explanations. Some parents, mothers or fathers, may have had children at a time when their developmental needs were not sufficiently met. In other words, they were not emotionally or socially ready to be parents. When they had children, they were a long way off in getting their basic needs met for safety, self-esteem, intimacy, or belonging. As any parent knows who has had to wake up several times in the night, put their social lives on hold, or remain calm while a baby is crying for hours, it's an exasperating and selfless task. It requires a great deal of emotional maturity. Having a baby when a person is young, in circumstances when there is little support from family or a partner, or where the parent's developmental needs are unmet, can all make it difficult to provide adequate care for a baby or child. Exercise 2. Reflection on why you were harmed. The above section suggests 4 possible reasons why you experienced abuse, neglect, or abandonment as a child. These explanations are: 1. A person learns to be an abuser through experiences of being abused. 2. Abuse or neglect is related to significant mental health or medical issues. 3. Abuse is a consequence of an empathy deficit. 4. The person is not developmentally ready to be a parent or lacks support. Consider one person who harmed you as a child. Does one or more of the explanations above help explain why they harmed you? You can do this exercise for additional persons who harmed you if you wish, but you may need more paper. Please pause the audio and complete exercise 2 in the guidebook. Did you ever confront someone who harmed you? Confrontation can happen in many ways, but it means asking someone who harmed you to explain why they acted as they did in the past. It usually means challenging this behavior, and it often includes explaining what you thought of it or how you experienced it. In whatever form, confrontation offers the person who harmed you an opportunity to explain themselves. It is not our role to suggest that you should or should not confront. This is a very personal and sometimes complex decision. Some individuals will have confronted those who abused or neglected them at a certain point. Others never have. We have known cases of confrontation which were calm and helpful, cases which were downright violent, and most cases falling somewhere between. Cynthia was emotionally neglected and abandoned by her mother. At the age of 45, Cynthia hadn't had contact with her mother for over 20 years. One day, she sent her mother an email asking to meet her. They had dinner at a restaurant, and Cynthia asked her mother why she had put her into foster care when she was 9 years old. It was a difficult and emotional conversation, but it led to understanding and a restart of their relationship. John's father was a violent alcoholic who physically abused him and other family members. We are certainly not suggesting you approach confrontation as John did, but it makes for an interesting example. Quote, "When I was 14, my dad was really drunk and he was ranting and throwing things around and scaring my mom and sisters. I pushed him down on the couch and I screamed at him and told him just what I thought of him. Every time he tried to get up, I just pushed him down again." End quote. Some individuals may express their anger about what they experienced indirectly. Rather than confronting directly and with words, the individual will act out the confrontation. Michelle had little contact with her biological mother and was emotionally abused and neglected by her stepmother. And her father never stepped in to protect her. Quote, "I left home as soon as I could. I was 17 and I got a job and I paid for my own flat. I never told them where I was and I didn't contact them for 8 years. I guess it was my way of telling them what I thought of them." End quote. Perhaps you confronted the people who abused or neglected you. However, it's not unusual for a confrontation not to have taken place. Many feel so threatened by those who abused them that confrontation in childhood or adulthood evokes a lot of anxiety. In other cases, the abuser is deceased or the person who was harmed has lost contact with them, making confrontation impossible. It's also common for people to avoid confrontation because they worry that it will divide family members or even tear a family apart. In some cases, people can have experiences of confrontation that are therapeutic. Those who abused or neglected may express remorse or offer an explanation which seems helpful. Maybe you have experienced this in the past. Or if you confront someone in the future, perhaps you will have a good experience. However, it's common for confrontation to be a disappointing or frustrating experience. Many abusers feel a need to rationalize or explain away their behavior in ways which can be confusing or infuriating. The responses below capture themes related to unhelpful confrontations. If you had a negative experience of confrontation, you can highlight or circle any themes related to that encounter in the guidebook. 1. Denial. That didn't happen. 2. Minimization. Oh, come on, it wasn't that bad. 3. Blaming the victim. You deserved it. 4. Rationalization. I was trying to teach you about life. 5. Excuses. It was the alcohol. I was a single parent. We had no money, etc. 6. Red herrings. Refocusing the conversation on something irrelevant. 7. Poor me. But I was going through a bad time myself, etc. The responses above are different in certain ways, but they all have two things in common. The person you are confronting is not acknowledging what it was like for you, and they are not taking responsibility for their role. Some abusers find it impossible to acknowledge the impact of their behavior on those they harmed. Some abusers actually believe that they were justified in acting the way they did. This can be a personality trait that is quite rigid. If you never confronted the abuser, we do not have fixed ideas about whether you should. It may be important for your personal development to confront the abuser, or this may not be helpful, necessary, or even possible. It's a very personal decision. Whether or not you actually confront the abuser, what matters is that the abuser holds as little power as possible over you, your thoughts, and feelings. Exercise 3. History of confrontation. Did you ever confront those who abused or neglected you? What happened, and was this helpful or not? Please pause the audio and complete exercise 3 in the guidebook. I'm not like them. The feelings adults have towards those who harmed them are often very negative. Anger, revulsion, fear, and other painful feelings are common. Something else we find is that people can often feel a strong need not to be like those who harmed them. Carrie experienced emotional abuse, and she put it like this, quote, "My mom was insane. She would blow up with anger over nothing, a total drama queen. Me and my brothers and sisters were scared of her all the time. You never knew when she was going to blow. I never want to be like her." End quote. However, the person who did the harming can still feel like a big presence in one's life. As a result, some individuals feel a need to define themselves as someone who is not like the person who harmed them. This was true of Carrie, quoted above, who wanted to be the sort of mother for her kids she never had. She was a great mom, very caring and affectionate, and she always put her kids first. There was a problem, though. In her attempt to be completely not like her mother, who had been aggressive, she found it difficult to use appropriate boundaries and discipline with her children. Quote, "My kids walk all over me," end quote, she says. Other people can find moments when they feel upset because they might see some trait in themselves which reminds them of the person who hurt them. Ralph was both physically and sexually abused by his father throughout his childhood. Quote, "I hated him so much. He was such an angry man, and he terrified me when I was a kid. He would scream at me and punch me. He was out of control. That's why I hate it when I get angry at my wife or friends. It makes me think I'm like him, and I hate that." End quote. We know that most people don't turn out like the adults who abused or neglected them. We have research into intergenerational patterns of child maltreatment. This is research which explores whether people who are abused or neglected as children become parents who abuse and neglect their children. We can summarize what we seem to know, but we need to point out that research findings point to what is true on average, not what is true for any one individual. There is evidence suggesting that parents who experienced trauma historically are more likely, on average, to struggle with their role as parent. This is seen in the finding that parents who experience PTSD are at higher risk of raising children who also struggle with PTSD. Again, this points to a higher risk on average, not what is necessarily true for any individual. And it's important to keep in mind that the majority of people who were abused or neglected as children do not go on to abuse or neglect their children. The point being made here is that those who harmed you often cast a long shadow over your life today. This may mean you try very hard not to be like them. Like Carrie, this is a good idea, but it can also constrict you in some ways. Or some individuals get upset or even scared when they see traits in themselves which remind them of the people who hurt them, like Ralph. A part of overcoming the effects of historical trauma is learning to be yourself. This means reducing the presence of the abuser in your head and feelings. Exercise 4. Your letter to someone who harmed you. This exercise will help you clarify your thoughts and feelings towards someone who abused, neglected, or abandoned you. If there were several people who caused harm, it will be necessary to choose one of them. If you wish, you can write additional letters, though this is optional and you may need more paper. The purpose of writing this letter is simply to help you organize your thoughts and feelings towards a person who harmed you, to help bring these thoughts and feelings into conscious awareness. There is no expectation that you send the letter to this person. When a person confronts, how a person confronts, and whether a person confronts is a very personal matter. This exercise may trigger some strong feelings, such as anger or fear. If these feelings or impulses start to get overwhelming, you can take a break and look after yourself, e.g., distract yourself, talk to someone, or use the strategies you acquired in the section Preparing for a Safe and Productive Experience. You can write your letter on your own, or you can do it with someone you trust if that helps. Only you can write this letter to the person who hurt you, and you should do it on your terms. However, for many people, it can be important to consider 3 areas. 1. You may want to tell them how their behavior affected you when you were younger. 2. You may want to tell them how their behavior has affected your life. 3. You may not need or want anything from them, but if you do, you could indicate this as well. Please pause the audio and complete exercise 4 in the guidebook, and note that this ends the audio for the chapter on the people who harmed you.